My name is Elena Morrison. I was 31 years old when my sister sold my building. Not suggested selling it, not asked if I wanted to. She sold it. The text came in at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of ordinary timestamp that later feels obscene in its normality. I was sitting in a conference room downtown, glass walls, polished concrete floors, the quiet hum of city planning officials arguing over zoning overlays. My phone was face down beside my notebook, silenced out of habit. When it vibrated, I barely looked. Then I did. Sold your worthless building for $175,000. Family needs the money more than you. No greeting, no question mark, just a statement, like gravity, like law. I stared at the screen long enough that the words stopped meaning anything. Then I read it again and again. My sister Clara had sold my building. I turned the phone over and placed it gently on the table, the way you set down something sharp before it cuts you. My pulse thudded behind my ears, steady but loud. No one noticed. That's always been my gift, breaking quietly. The building Clara referred to, the worthless one, was currently valued at $7.8 million. 6 floors, mixed use, downtown, 3 anchor tenants on the ground floor, offices above, luxury lofts at the top. Monthly rental income, $128,000. But Clara didn't know that. None of them did. To my family, I was still Elena, the one who never quite launched, the sister who worked as a property manager instead of going to law school, the daughter who didn't marry money, the quiet one with the modest life. They didn't know I owned 19 properties across the city. They didn't know the job title I used was camouflage. They didn't know the 2-bedroom apartment they pitied me for was a penthouse I owned outright, with a terrace overlooking half the skyline. I learned early that my family equated success with spectacle. Clara's Yale law degree. My other sister Natalie's marriage to a venture capitalist. The cars, the houses, the visible proof. My success had no ceremony, no applause, no announcement. So I let them believe I had nothing. The meeting ended at 4:15 p.m. I checked my phone again. 3 more messages. Already deposited the check. Don't be mad. You should thank me for getting $175K for that dump. The check had gone into Clara's law firm account. The firm my father had funded, the firm bleeding money quietly while Clara bought designer furniture and marble desks instead of clients. I didn't reply. I called my attorney. Elena Morrison, he answered on the second ring. His tone shifted immediately. What's wrong? My sister sold one of my properties without my consent. Silence. The Morrison building, I added, downtown. Another pause, papers rustling. Elena, he said carefully, that's fraud, possibly grand theft. Multiple felonies. I know, I said. Start the process. By 6:30 p.m., I was pulling into my parents' driveway. Tuesday was family dinner. Clara's Mercedes was parked sideways as usual. Natalie's husband's Tesla gleamed beside it. Inside, my mother was already celebrating. Clara told us the wonderful news, she said brightly, about the sale. I walked past her without answering. In the dining room, Clara sat at the head of the table, drinking my father's expensive scotch like it belonged to her. There she is, she smiled. You're welcome. I sat down slowly. That's when I realized something. They weren't afraid. They weren't nervous. They truly believed they had done nothing wrong. And that was when I knew. This wasn't just about money. This was about what they thought I was worth. No one noticed the way my hands trembled as I reached for the water glass. Not because I was scared, but because I was angry in a way that required restraint. Clara stood at the head of the table, her posture relaxed, her confidence unearned and absolute. The chair she'd taken was my father's. No one had questioned it. No one ever questioned Clara. I told everyone already, she said, swirling the amber liquid in her glass. About the building. You should have seen Mom's face when I explained how bad the market was for that area. Total liability. My mother nodded eagerly from the kitchen doorway. Honestly, Elena, we were worried about you holding on to that thing for so long. Empty buildings are such a drain. It wasn't empty, I said quietly. Natalie leaned forward, brows knit in polite confusion. But you didn't own it, right? There it was. The assumption, dressed as curiosity. You were just managing it, she continued, for whoever actually owned it. That's what you've always done. I looked at her, really looked. Natalie had always been gentle when she looked down on me. Clara was sharp. Natalie was soft. But the result was the same. I own it, I said. Clara laughed. It wasn't cruel, it was dismissive. Elena, please, she said. You manage properties. There's a difference. I purchased it in March of 2018, I replied. Cash. The room shifted. Just slightly. Dad cleared his throat. Elena, sweetheart, where would you have gotten that kind of money? The same question, every time. I worked, I said. Clara waved her hand. You made 48 grand a year. I reported 48 grand a year. Silence stretched, uncomfortable now. My mother sat down slowly. Honey, are you feeling okay? There it was again. Concern disguised as doubt. I own 19 properties, I continued. The building you sold is worth $7.8 million. It generates $128,000 in monthly rental income. Clara's smile tightened. That's ridiculous. Is it? I asked. You drive a Honda, she snapped. You live in a tiny apartment. A penthouse, I corrected. That I own. Mortgage-free. Natalie gasped. Her husband, Mark, shifted in his seat, eyes flicking between us. He was the only one in this room who understood numbers, and I could see it in his face. He was recalculating everything he thought he knew about me. Dad stood. Enough. This is getting out of hand. My phone rang. I stood as I answered it, walking into the kitchen. Elena, my attorney said, we have confirmation. Your sister used forged documents. The title company is cooperating. The buyer is threatening legal action. I closed my eyes. She deposited the money already. We're freezing the account. But Elena, her firm was insolvent before this. I exhaled slowly. File the police report. I returned to the dining room. They're filing charges, I said calmly. Fraud, forgery, grand theft. Clara shot to her feet. You wouldn't. I already did. My mother started crying. Dad's face flushed red. This family handles things privately, he said. We don't involve the police. She stole from me. She helped you, Clara snapped. The firm needed capital. The firm is failing, I replied, and you panicked. Her phone buzzed. She answered it on speaker, hands shaking. Yes, this is Clara. Her face drained of color. What do you mean? Owner's consent. She sat down hard. They're suing me, she whispered. They want the money back, and damages. Natalie's phone buzzed next. Oh my God, she said, you're trending. Clara looked up wild-eyed. Local attorney sells $7.8 million property without owner's consent. My father grabbed his jacket. This is fixable. With what money? I asked. You refinanced this house to fund her firm. Natalie, you co-signed her lease. Natalie went pale. Mark turned to me slowly. You really own that many properties? Yes. He swallowed. The lease, the building. I own that too. His expression changed. Respect, fear, relief. The doorbell rang. 2 police officers stood in the doorway moments later. Clara Thompson? She stood. As they cuffed her, she looked at me. I'm your sister. I know, I said. That's why this hurts. When they left, the house collapsed into chaos. Later that night, my phone rang again. Elena, my attorney said, the state bar is opening an ethics investigation. Her license will be suspended. I looked out at the city skyline from my terrace. I'm okay, I said, because I finally understood something. They hadn't underestimated me by accident. They had needed me to be small so they could stay big. I didn't sleep that night. I stood on the terrace until dawn, wrapped in a robe, watching the city breathe. Streetlights blinked off one by one. Delivery trucks replaced police sirens. Somewhere below, people started their ordinary days. Coffee, emails, meetings, unaware that my family's life had split cleanly in two. At 6:42 a.m., my phone began to ring. I let it go to voicemail. By the time the sun cleared the buildings across from mine, I had 12 missed calls and 21 text messages. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. An aunt who only called when she needed something. An uncle who once told me I should marry better. Every message circled the same thing without touching it. Are you okay? This is so terrible about Clara. Family sticks together in times like this. What they wanted to ask but wouldn't was whether the number was real. 7.8 million. I made coffee instead of answering. At 9:15 a.m., my attorney called with the first real update. Elena, the buyer, Cornerstone Development, is furious, he said. They're legitimate. They believe they were purchasing from an authorized representative. They verified ownership, I asked. They did. That's the problem. Clara's documents were convincing. The title company missed the forgery. They're facing license revocation. Their insurance won't cover fraud. And Clara? She's out on bail, $85,000. I closed my eyes. My father paid it. Yes, he refinanced again. Of course he did. By noon, the story was everywhere. Not just local news, industry news, legal ethics blogs, commercial real estate journals. A thread on social media dissected every detail with surgical delight. Someone had pulled Clara's firm website screenshots, her LinkedIn endorsements, her past quotes about integrity and family values. The internet has no mercy for hypocrisy. At 1:30 p.m., my boyfriend Daniel showed up at my door unannounced. He didn't bring advice. He didn't ask questions. He just wrapped his arms around me and let me stand there until my breathing slowed. "I didn't know you were this powerful," he said quietly. I almost laughed. "I didn't either," I replied. "Not like this." That afternoon, the police searched Clara's office. They found what I already knew they would. Unpaid invoices, past due notices, credit lines maxed out. Her firm had been drowning for months. The money she'd spent, designer chairs, imported lighting, a marble reception desk, had been the visible kind. The invisible expenses, the ones that kept the place alive, ignored. By 5:00 p.m., the State Bar Association announced a formal investigation. Temporary suspension. Permanent disbarment pending outcome. Daniel asked if I wanted him to stay. "I need to do this alone," I said. He nodded. He understood. At 7:12 p.m., my father called. "Elena," he said, his voice hoarse, "we need to talk." "We already did. This has gone too far. She forged legal documents. She made a mistake. She committed multiple felonies." There was a pause. "Your mother is inconsolable." "I know. You could stop this," he said. "You could make it go away." I stared out at the city, at buildings I owned, at lights I paid for, at a life I built without him. "If I stop this," I said slowly, "what does she learn?" Silence. At 9:40 p.m., Natalie texted. "I'm so sorry. I should have defended you. I didn't." I stared at the message longer than I expected. Then I replied, "Thank you. That matters." The next morning, Clara was formally charged. Fraud, forgery, grand theft. The amounts made it federal interest adjacent. The DA's office moved quickly. They didn't like cases that embarrassed the city. At the arraignment, Clara didn't look at me. She looked smaller. Not humbled, but exposed. Her attorney argued desperation, pressure, family expectations. The judge listened politely, then set the restitution hearing. $7.8 million. The number echoed in the courtroom like a verdict on its own. Outside, reporters shouted questions. "Do you feel betrayed by your sister? Is this about revenge? Do you plan to help her financially?" I said nothing. Back at home, my attorney laid out the realities. "She'll likely plead," he said. "Probation instead of prison if she cooperates. Permanent disbarment. Restitution ordered." "She can't pay," I said. "No," he agreed. "She can't." That night, my father called again. "Please," he said, "as your father, help her." "How?" "Pay the restitution." I laughed then. Not loudly, not kindly. "If I do that," I said, "she walks away believing she was right, that she was entitled." "She's your sister." "And I was your daughter," I replied, "all these years." He had no answer. The plea deal came 4 weeks later. 6 years probation, permanent loss of license, full restitution. At the hearing, the judge ordered payments of $3,000 a month. At that rate, Clara would finish paying in 217 years. She was 34. When it ended, she finally looked at me. Not with anger, not with entitlement, with something closer to disbelief, like she was seeing me for the first time, and realizing, too late, that I had always been standing on solid ground. The first time I saw my sister cry on television, I was standing in line at a bakery 2 blocks from one of my buildings. The screen was mounted above the espresso machine, muted, rolling a loop of local headlines. I wasn't paying attention until I saw her face, blurred slightly, framed by the words, "Former attorney faces restitution hearing." Someone behind me whispered, "That's her." I took my coffee and left without looking back. By then, Clara's fall had become a public spectacle. Not scandal, spectacle. The kind people consumed with morning coffee and forgot by lunch, but that never truly left the person at the center of it. The articles dissected her choices with clinical interest. Legal analysts debated ethics. Commentators speculated about motives. Some painted her as greedy, others as desperate. None of them understood the truth. She hadn't stolen because she wanted more. She had stolen because she believed I had less. That belief spread through my family like rot. My mother stopped calling after the first week. When she did leave messages, they were short and raw. "How could you do this to her? She's your sister." "You could have handled this quietly." Quietly. As if forgery and fraud were minor inconveniences best swept under rugs. My father tried a different approach. He showed up at my building one afternoon, unannounced, standing stiffly in the lobby like he didn't belong there. He looked smaller than I remembered, older. The confidence he'd always carried, the certainty that he knew best, had thinned. We sat across from each other in my living room, floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out behind him like evidence. "You've done well," he said finally. I waited. "I didn't know," he added. "No," I agreed. "You didn't." He rubbed his hands together. "Clara's struggling." "She should be." He flinched. "She's lost everything. She lost what she built on lies." "That's still something," he said. "She's humiliated. She can't sleep. People stare at her." "So did I replied. "For years. Just quietly." He sighed. "Your mother thinks you've gone cold." I looked at him then. Really looked. "I didn't change," I said. "I just stopped absorbing damage for other people's comfort." He didn't argue. 2 weeks later, the restitution hearing arrived. The courtroom was full. Reporters, legal observers, a few curious strangers who'd read about it online and wanted to see the woman who sold a landmark she didn't own. Clara stood beside her attorney, shoulders rounded, hair pulled back tightly like she was trying to disappear into herself. When the judge read the terms, probation, restitution, permanent disbarment, she didn't react. Not until the payment schedule was announced. $3,000 a month. I watched the realization settle in. This wasn't a sentence measured in years. It was measured in lifetimes. Afterward, in the hallway, my mother approached me. Her eyes were swollen, her face drawn. "Are you satisfied?" she asked. "No," I said honestly. "I'm resolved." "That's not the same thing." "No," I agreed again. "It's harder." Clara didn't speak to me then. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She walked past me like I was another reporter, another stranger. I think that hurt more than anything else, because it confirmed what I'd suspected all along. She didn't regret stealing from me. She regretted being caught. The calls from extended family slowed after that. The curiosity faded once it became clear there was no hidden fortune to be extracted, no generous bailout waiting behind my silence. People drifted back to their lives. Only Natalie remained. She invited me to lunch one afternoon, nervous but determined. We met at a cafe downtown. She didn't talk about Clara right away. She asked about me, about work, about Daniel. It was the first time she'd ever done that without circling back to herself. "I always thought you were behind," she admitted finally, "that you needed help, guidance. And now?" She smiled weakly. "Now I realize you were the only one who didn't need anyone's permission." We sat in silence for a moment. "She asks about you," Natalie said. "Clara does." I nodded. "I know. Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know," I said. "Forgiveness isn't a switch, it's a process, and she hasn't started hers yet." Natalie accepted that. Months passed. Clara lost the Mercedes, then the apartment, then the firm. She took a job at a property management company, entry level, $46,000 a year, managing buildings for someone else. When my mother told me, her voice was sharp with accusation. "Are you happy now?" she asked. "Is this what you wanted?" I thought of the years I'd done that exact job, the long hours, the condescension, the way my family barely acknowledged it. "I wanted accountability," I said, "not humiliation." She hung up on me. A year later, I ran into Clara by accident. A grocery store, late evening, empty aisles. She looked up and froze. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she nodded, small, controlled. "Hi," she said. "Hi." She hesitated. "I didn't know you shopped here." "I live nearby." "Of course I did. I always had." She swallowed. I'm sorry." The words were quiet, barely audible. I waited, let the silence do the work. "I was wrong," she added, "about you." I met her eyes, saw exhaustion, fear, something like humility beginning to form. "I know," I said. She looked like she wanted to say more, to ask for something, forgiveness, help, absolution. She didn't. That was progress. When I walked away, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, because power isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself, and it doesn't need permission. The night before the restitution hearing, my father called me at 11:18 p.m. I remember the time because I was still awake, sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of water I hadn't touched. The city outside my windows was quiet in that deep, suspended way it only gets past midnight. The kind of silence that invites confession. "Elena," he said, skipping any pretense. His voice was raw, stripped of authority. "I'm begging you." I closed my eyes. "Don't," I said softly. "Please don't do this." "She's terrified," he continued. "She hasn't slept in days. She keeps saying she's ruined her life." "She did," I replied. "That's not fear. That's reality." You could fix this, he said again. You have the money. You could pay the restitution. Make it go away. There it was. Not help her rebuild, not help her learn. Erase consequences. Restore comfort. Preserve the illusion. No, I said. A sharp inhale on the other end. How can you be so heartless? The word landed harder than I expected. Heartless. I thought of every holiday dinner where Clara's achievements were praised and mine were tolerated. Every casual comment about my little job. Every time my parents asked Natalie about her life first and me last, if at all. I'm not heartless, I said. I'm finished absorbing blame for things I didn't do. She's your sister. And I was your daughter, I replied, all this time. Silence. I worked for everything I have, I continued, alone, because none of you believed I could. And the moment Clara thought she could profit from my work, she took it without asking, without hesitation. She assumed, I cut in, that I had nothing worth protecting. He exhaled slowly. If you don't pay, she could go to jail. If I do pay, I said, she learns that stealing from me has no consequences, that I exist to clean up her messes. Another pause, longer this time. We raised you better than this, he said quietly. I laughed then, once, sharp. You raised me to be invisible, I said. I just learned how to survive it. I hung up before he could respond. The next morning, the courtroom was packed again. Clara stood before the judge in a plain blazer, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Not just diminished, but uncertain, like someone standing on ground that no longer held. When the judge confirmed the restitution terms, I felt the room shift. Not relief, not satisfaction. Finality. Afterward, as we filed out, my mother stopped me near the doors. Her face was streaked with tears, mascara smudged beyond repair. You could still change your mind, she whispered. It's not too late. It is, I said gently, for that version of us. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she never had. Weeks passed. The media interest faded, as it always does. New scandals replaced old ones. Clara became a cautionary footnote instead of a headline. Her name stopped trending. The world moved on. Our family didn't. My parents downsized quietly. The house in Riverside Estates went on the market. Natalie stopped visiting them as often. The weight of Clara's collapse bent everything around it. I stayed distant, not out of cruelty, but clarity. Daniel worried about me at first, asked if I was okay, if I regretted anything. I regret believing I had to earn the right to be respected, I told him. I don't regret stopping. He never pushed. He never tried to fix it. That's how I knew he was different. 2 months after the hearing, my attorney called with an update. Cornerstone is satisfied, he said. They're focusing on the title company now. Your building's secure. No further action needed from you. Good. One more thing, he added. Your sister's creditors are circling. Over $400,000 in unpaid expenses. I wasn't surprised. Clara had always paid for what looked successful. The rest was noise. Let me know if anything touches my assets, I said. It won't, he assured me. You're insulated. That word stayed with me. Insulated. Not just financially. Emotionally. Months later, Natalie invited me to lunch again. This time, she didn't tiptoe. I was wrong, she said flatly. About you, about everything. I nodded. I know. She smiled sadly. I thought success looked loud. Turns out it just looks calm. We talked for hours. About her kids, her marriage, her doubts. Not once did she ask about my properties or my money. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. Clara didn't reach out. Not until 8 months after her conviction. She sent a message, one sentence. I'm working as a property manager now, entry level. I finally understand what you did. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied, understanding is a beginning, not a conclusion. She didn't answer. That was fine. Forgiveness, I'd learned, isn't something you owe someone because they share your blood. It's something you consider when accountability has finished its work. And Clara was only just starting. 18 months after Clara's conviction, my life looked almost exactly the same. Same penthouse, same morning routine, same city unfolding beneath my windows like a map I knew by heart. That used to bother me, the lack of visible change. I'd been conditioned to believe that impact had to look dramatic. That power needed proof. That growth had to be loud enough for others to notice. Now I understood better. Stability was the reward. Clara's life, on the other hand, had changed completely. She worked at a mid-sized property management company on the west side of the city. Entry-level title, No corner office, no assistant, no leather chairs or marble desks. She handled maintenance tickets, tenant complaints, late payments, the work I'd done for years while she'd been praised for aiming higher. My mother called me when she found out. "She's barely surviving," she said. "46,000 a year, Elena. She's overqualified." I leaned against the kitchen counter, phone pressed to my ear. "I wasn't," I replied. "That's different," my mother said quickly. I waited. She didn't explain how. Silence stretched between us, heavy and unresolved. Finally, she said, "She's humbled." "I hope so," I answered. "Humility lasts longer than pity." We didn't talk much after that. My father tried once more. He invited me to coffee. Neutral ground. A small cafe near the river. He looked older than his years now, the kind of tired that comes from realizing you were wrong too late to undo it. "I didn't see you," he admitted quietly. "All those years." "No," I said, "you didn't. I thought you needed guidance, direction." "I needed trust." He nodded slowly. "You were always so quiet." "I had to be," I replied. "No one listened when I wasn't." That was the closest we ever came to reconciliation. Not forgiveness, recognition. Natalie was different. She changed after everything happened, not dramatically, but deliberately. She stopped comparing, stopped defending, started listening. One afternoon, we met for lunch again. She watched me stir my coffee, then smiled. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I spent years thinking you were falling behind. And now I realize you were just walking a different path, one that didn't need witnesses." I smiled back. "I didn't need applause. I needed freedom." She nodded. "You had that the whole time." We sat there quietly, two sisters finally meeting as equals. Clara didn't contact me again for a long time. Not until one rainy evening, nearly 2 years after her arrest. I was leaving a grocery store when I saw her across the parking lot, struggling with an umbrella that had turned inside out in the wind. She laughed at herself, frustrated and embarrassed, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw the sister I'd grown up with. Not the attorney, not the headline. Just Clara. She noticed me then and froze. We stood there, rain pooling around our feet. "Hi," she said. "Hi." She hesitated, then lowered the umbrella, let the rain hit her hair, her jacket. "I won't ask for forgiveness," she said. "I don't think I've earned that." I appreciated that more than she knew. I just wanted to say, "You were right, about everything." I studied her face, the exhaustion, the effort, the absence of entitlement. "I know," I said gently. She swallowed. "I used to think success meant being seen, being admired. And now? And now I think it means not needing to take what isn't yours." That was new. That mattered. "I'm trying," she added. "I really am." I believed her. But belief didn't require rescue. "I hope you keep trying," I said, "for yourself." She nodded, once, then walked away. I didn't feel victorious. I felt complete. Because the truth was, I had never been weak. I had been underestimated. And when people underestimate you, they reveal more about themselves than they ever will about you. The building Clara tried to steal still stands downtown, its lights glowing every night. 6 floors of quiet proof, one of 19. Sometimes I walk past it and smile, not because of what it's worth, but because of what it taught me. That silence isn't absence. That humility isn't powerlessness. And that the quiet one at the table is often the only one who actually owns it.